Livestock to us is like a son or a girl to me. If he's not taken by a lion, my children, where will they eat? How will they go to school if I lost all my livestock?
Welcome back to Into the Wild's new mini-series for 2025, Journey Back to Namibia. This episode and series has been funded by the UK International Development from the UK government. However, the views expressed do not necessarily reflect the UK government's official policies. We also worked in partnership with NACSO, which stands for the Namibian Association for Community-Based Natural Resource Management Support Organisations, who supported us in getting to and talking with members of the community in the areas we visited. Let's move on to episode 3 of Journey Back to Namibia, Food and Farming.
I honestly think Ryan did the microphone setup for recording this episode together, and he's sat on a chair and I'm on the floor looking up at him.
Yeah. I mean, you set your bit up, I set my bit up.
You took the chair.
It says a lot about the personality types that I've taken the sofa.
It's fine. Do you know what? You've been training for an ultramarathon. Your knees are sore.
I did.
You couldn't sit on the floor.
I've done a half marathon today. Just throwing that out there. New personal best.
I did some gardening. So whatever. Ryan came all the way to Scotland to visit me and then just left and went out.
Left and did an hour and 45-minute run.
Well, we're back for...
We're back. How are you?
Oh, I'm great down here in my place. I'm actually... Do you know what? I'm actually really, really good. I'm quite often... We whinge and moan about things and all the different bits in our lives, but largely I'm feeling extraordinarily grounded and looking forward to spring, so I'm happy.
I feel like it's that time of year, isn't it? Because we all know spring is like right there.
Oh my God.
Right there. So people are starting to feel a bit of a relief, I think.
Oh, it's like scratching an itch.
Is it?
It's so good.
Frog spawn is like getting that itch.
Birds are singing.
Right. Yeah.
Buds are plenty.
Okay. Yes. Well, it's lovely to see you.
Are you all right?
I'm grand. Yeah, I'm good. I'm like you said, I'm a bit achy. Creaky today because I
ran him a bath.
You did run me a bath after my run today. So I'm training. For nerds that aren't aware, who don't maybe follow me on socials, I am currently training for an ultra marathon. If you want to learn more of that, you can visit my own social media. My tag is in the write-up of this bio. There's a fundraiser there available. So my legs are a bit achy today, but luckily I'm sat down on a comfy sofa, as we've already established, so I'm doing all right. I'm doing fine. All good. I'm excited for spring.
To be back recording the next part of this series.
Yeah, me too.
Because every time we do this, we get to relive our trip to Namibia.
it's like we go back. It's like re-looking at the photo album of your holiday. Yeah, it's been really nice. Nadia and I today have been listening back to some of the interviews that we've had recorded, and it just puts you back there, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Yeah.
Almost warms you up, literally. Like if you're cold.
There is that psychological thing. Like if you think there's like experiments where if someone talks you through about think about a lemon, cutting the lemon open, you start salivating.
Yeah, and it was that. Well, I was listening to it today.
Do you know what? 'Cause he lives. Next time I'm cold, I'm just going to think about being in Namibia. Turn the heating off and think about holiday.
Just think about Namibia. Welcome to life in Britain in 2025. How do you keep warm? I think of Africa. So welcome to episode 3 of our Namibian series, Journey Back to Namibia. This episode is called Food and Farming, and no prizes, nerds, given out for anyone that guesses what we're talking about on today's show. It's quite self-explanatory. But we're looking at... So on the previous episode, when the rain stopped, we looked at the climate crisis, how that can kind of take shape, specifically looking at droughts, what droughts are, what they can bring to a region or a country, as in challenges, not just lack of rain, but we're looking at intense heat and dryness as well, and change the way people are able to live. We heard from a farmer that shared her kind of 20 years experience living in this region and seeing how it changed and how the landscape changed, how the emotions of people and her family changed, and how hope played a very strong part in how they're going to go forward and adapt and kind of stay living in these areas. So that's what we looked at already. We're now looking at how do communities feed themselves and stay secure with food, living in such intense environments such as a semi-desert country within a long drought.
So you just said the word there that we want to explore today, secure.
Yes.
And we're concentrating, thinking about food security. I do have a problem with this word food security because...
Go on.
And what I mentioned, in the last episode, I did talk about the terminology we use to talk about humans and how much I really we on this podcast really want to humanize. Food security is such an abstract set of words, but...
It's not human, is it?
It's still not human. And basically what we mean is, it's overlaying economic systems and all of this stuff. But really what we're talking about is the ability for humans to eat, which is a
fueling
human
yourself.
right. There is an actual definition of it. Did you have that definition?
There is indeed. The OECD defines food security as the state of having reliable access to sufficient quantity of affordable and nutritious food.
There you go. So I think, yeah. So I think in a like a Western context, UK context, for our understanding, we have the ability to earn cash because we don't have land to grow food anymore. So food security for us is to be able to earn money. That money is enough to reasonably cover the costs to buy food to sustain yourself. But when you go to the shops to buy food, the food is there, the shelves are stocked, all of the systems are in place, that food's been transported usually from around the globe. We have a very, very complex food system here in the UK. But for different countries, different cultures, different communities, food security means a completely different thing. And there are many communities and cultures where the food that a community or a people eat isn't as convoluted as our systems are, which is like, this fruit is picked in this country, then shipped to this country for canning, and then shipped to this country to be made into a pudding, which is shipped to another country. And it's not like that at all. We did, we spent a while in Namibia, so we also ate food. I mean, maybe it's worth talking about the difference. What is the Namibian food system diet like?
Well, I guess, yeah, and it's before we start talking about the food in Namibia, let's just remind you all that the environment we're talking about here, this is a semi-desert environment, very rural.
Climate.
Now, I will say, if you're in Windhoek or if you're in the coastal town of Swakopmund, yes, you can eat an abundance of and variety of different types of food.
Really.
Yeah, you can eat Italian food, you can eat Chinese food, you can go for seafood. It's a very, almost feels that you can feel that Western colonial setup still. Do you know what I mean? It's very Western.
Yeah.
But we are talking specifically about rural areas that are living a lot more traditionally diet-wise about what is readily available, really. But remember, we're in the semi-desert, so meat is the main source of food for people in Namibia, mainly because it's the easiest thing to grow. So from farming or from hunting, meat is the things that is usually readily available. There are other things. So maize came into play around the 16th century. Portuguese brought maize over to Africa, mainly starting on the coast on Angola, and that would have channeled down to Namibia as well. But before that happened, millet, which is that similar to maize, Nadia?
No, maize. It's not, but it can be treated in the same way. So millet seeds are really, really small, but the process of drying out seeds, grinding it down into flour or a meal to create like a porridge or something like that kind of traditional way of treating seeds.
Right.
But yeah, so millet was the traditional
traditional way, and now maize is used a lot more. It's kind of this porridge consistency, like Nadia said.
Maize meal.
Eaten alongside meats of many kinds. So cattle, goat, chicken, rabbit, the wild meat, looking at zebra, ostrich,
kudu,
gemsbok, springbok, all these kind of antelope that would be grazing and being kind of, readily available. When we were in rural areas, there were more vegetables and fruits available. So a lot of people are growing tomatoes.
Yeah.
Lettuces, salads, and cucumbers, pumpkins, and things like that, or squashes. That's obviously something that's been, I guess, adopted / it's something that's been brought to the country and now people are using.
The cash-based system to buy things rather than growing things and gathering yourself.
Yeah, exactly. So there are fruits and vegetables available now, but, looking at it traditionally.
But largely, a lot of families who don't necessarily have access to earning cash strictly like that, majority diets are still meat. Maize meal, and I would say every single farming, because there is a 12-year drought, every single household that we went to, there is a government supply, I think monthly, of maize meal, oil, and goat feed now comes to each family because of the 12-year
because
drought.
of the 12-year drought.
So if you're looking at eating goat meat, usually, I think what we did learn when we were in Namibia is that goat and cattle were the main livestock farmed.
Yeah.
But cattle are increasingly harder to keep alive because of the drought.
Neville Hendricks, who's featured on the podcast before, told us like kind of his experience of having his cattle die just from dehydration, and it was a really emotional story. It was really sad, and it kind of I mean, Neville wouldn't mind me saying this on the podcast, from a man that likes his food and meat, he showed a different view on an animal when he was talking about it like that. It was very interesting to see. But
I guess, I mean, like, you know, when we're taking out all of those supply chains, I guess the Namibian diet is very unlike our diet in that there is meat directly from the land in and around you. There is maize that is now shipped to farms. We'll talk a little bit about that shortly. Traditionally as well, I guess wild plants also provided those kind of macronutrients to the diet.
Absolutely.
Which in a semi-desert that hasn't had rain for 12 years is not as abundant as once was.
So now we know the foods. Let's kind of look at like why maybe food security is an issue for people living rurally in a country like Namibia during a 12-year-long drought. Now, when we look at meat, so like we just said, keeping livestock alive is getting harder and harder and harder. Cattle take in a lot of resources, both in food and water, and keeping safe from predators, which we'll hear about later on this episode. And the same with goats. A lot more farmers are going towards like chickens and rabbits because they take in less. Obviously, vegetables on any level are very difficult to grow, but on some cases a little bit easier because it's less water and you can keep them shaded. So we did see that, and we'll hear more about that as well. And finally, wild meat. I mean, there's not much around. It's moved. It's moved to where there's water. And, you know, we're about to hear, me and Nadia heard farmers talk about predators. I didn't hear many people talk about seeing other game, like herbivorous game that might be eaten.
Really,
so there's a lot to talk about predators.
Yeah, when you listen to the interviews here, you know, we talk about food security. First episode, you heard about climate change and drought. The threat of lions and elephants, the talk of herbivores was non-existent, really. So that's almost like tick done. Food insecurity because wild animals have gone is very apparent.
I mean, we say there, obviously, I know there's a nature nerd listening now going, excuse me, elephants are herbivores. Yes, we are aware, but they're not eaten. To my knowledge, I don't think any tribes in Namibia eat elephants.
Well, I think Maxi was saying the tribes that were in the area that we travelled, it's not commonplace to eat elephants.
But the reason why we bring up elephants there is because it is a conflict with gardens. Again, as you're going to hear, elephants battling for resources as much as any other being in this environment. So, it does bring those conflicts. So I'm going to say it's a very simplistic diet. I don't mean that in a negative way. What I mean is because it's a semi-desert environment, it is the meat because it sustains you better, and maize because it keeps you full in an environment where it's not luscious green all the time and you can constantly graze. It's that. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? Yeah. So it's very different to when we look at our temperate country over here, when we're eating kind of a lot of root vegetables and things like that traditionally. And our farming, and I don't know, it's very simplistic. I mean, I guess it's a meat and two veg.
But it's also like it's meat and two veg. I think also as well, like, you know, the swings of temperature from winter to summer.
Yeah.
You have the wet season, you have the dry season. Well, actually, pre-drought, these huge fluctuations. I want to say flocks, but it's herds, isn't it?
It's definitely herds. The ornithologist in you is screaming.
I keep saying flocks, I know. Huge herds of wildlife, like the abundance that there would have been in availability for having meat is an all year round thing that can be accessed, I guess. But also, I remember Maxi eating this biltong the whole time. So I'm assuming dried, cured meat is actually part of that as well.
Yeah.
So even when it was scarce as diet. And then maize, when you dry that seed out and you ground it into a flour, that can stay. So you can have it throughout the year as well. So there's just constant year round diet.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have mentioned farms a couple of times, and we are going to be hearing from some farmers on this episode. So let's talk about what farming looks like. So Nadia, farming in Namibia, what does this look like? Let's set a scene for the listeners. Is it like the farming in Scotland? Are we seeing rolling hills of green and cattle everywhere and sheep? Are we seeing that in Namibia?
I know that the word farm is going to evoke in your brain rolling green hills, maybe a dry stone wall, a lovely lane, hedgerow, one field, rows and rows of lovely crops or wheat growing with Theresa May just running through the middle. That joke still got miles from me. And, another sheep with the field with some Frisian black and white cows grazing, ready for milking later on. A landscape that is a patchwork of crisscross little coloured boxes as you look down. Whenever you've ever been on holiday and you're flying back into England, you'll see the patchwork quilt of the English landscape of fields. Swipe that from your mind immediately. When we use the word farming in relation to the rural communities that we went to in Namibia, whilst there are fences, you're looking at large wild commons. Now, a long time ago, a huge proportion of England used to have commons, a common land, a common treasury for all. So individual communities and farmers would have grazed their pigs, their cows, their sheep on a common land shared by everybody, mutually respected, mutually cared for, until the enclosures, which has given rise to our farming system today largely. But Namibia still has that, this idea of a community commons, and we are talking tens of thousands of acres, vast.
We've said it on this series before. There's picture a big space and triple it.
This isn't an OS map walk for the day across this huge landscapes, which are essentially a commons. And so when we talk about cattle and goats, they're not in a field as such, but they are, I guess, herded and grazed.
And you will always have a herder with them as well. That's the other thing. There'll be someone.
Well, they legally have to.
They legally have to, especially next to those roads. Having herding on the grasses that grow naturally on the space on the land.
Yeah. However, when you listen to some of the interviews with the farmers here, you'll understand that that's not as easy anymore because of drought and because of conflict. But yeah, I want you to picture that. And when our farmers are talking about, and when we're talking about growing vegetables, we're talking really small scale. We're talking allotment plot sized around the buildings and the homesteads that people live in. So that's my way of describing farming to you.
It's very subsistence. It's farm for yourself. There might be some farmers that sell some food. We're not entirely sure of that system. That could happen. There are. I do know there's local markets, obviously within communities where small scale trade might happen. There might be some other farmers that have more of a hold of livestock that can sell to a larger scale. But I would imagine most of it is subsistence for own use or for community use. Selling locally, and I include things like eggs in that as well as meat and things like that. So that's what farming kind of looks like, very small scale. Even though it's challenging at the moment because of the climate crisis, I will say there's still something in my heart that feels it's idyllic. There's something about subsistence farming that just rings comfortability in my heart.
I think because it's the undoing of the system that we don't
I think so, yeah. There's something that I'm just like, isn't it nice to just grow food for yourself and for your neighbours? I don't know. There's something in that just makes me go, even though I know the farmers we're about to hear from might say to me, well, it's not as easy.
If I could just go to the shop.
I prefer it.
And buy the thing.
But I know, thinking from someone in a completely different system with different issues.
Post-capitalist, on the decline, we're all desperate to pot out our vegetables.
So this is probably a good time to bring in and hear from our first guest. We're going to bring in a farmer called Joseph Muzuma. It was, I loved sitting with Joseph and his family.
Really lovely.
It was, honestly, we were made to feel welcome on our entire trip, but there was something about sitting with Joseph and his wife that just made us feel incredibly, I was going to say warm, but it was a very hot day as well. But it was like, maybe it was that. No, it was just, we just felt very welcome. It was very comfortable, and it was just lovely to hear about Joseph's experience. So before we hear from him, I just want to say that Joseph is more than just a farmer. He's actually on the board for the traditional authorities within his community. Now, if anything happens, this could be someone from the community, maybe someone that has moved out from their parents' house now and they want to set up on their own, but they want to have a house with their community. They have to go to the traditional authorities. So someone like Joseph, he will pick a plot with them and make sure it's kind of fit in with the community and it's going with what everyone needs and wants like that. And that's the same for foreign investment companies, whether it's mining or anything like that. They all have to go to the traditional authorities first.
Well, they're supposed to.
So Joseph is a very important man for that, as well as a very good farmer. So this is Joseph telling us a bit about his experience being a farmer in the current climate and dealing with things such as food security, as change of farming types, moving to gardens, and also dealing with human-wildlife conflict. First of all, thank you so much for meeting with us on your farm. This is a lovely setting to record in, I've got to say. Would you like to start by telling us who you are, your name, where we are, and what you do for a living?
I'm Joseph Muzuma.
Yes, my name is Joseph Muzuma. I'm a councillor in a traditional authority. My job is to resettle people in the village. So the resettlement go through me in traditional authorities in the place called Ochokavare, where we are today.
We can see your garden right here. Tomatoes look like they're doing very well. And it's lovely to see a garden here. Is gardening something that you've had to do more of? Obviously, so myself and Nadia are very aware of the drought. Is this garden a new thing for you? Is this something you've done for a while? And how have you found gardening in these kind of conditions?
After we've been hit too much by drought, this is why we have realized now, we need to do something else beside livestock. Because now the droughts have taken everything's livestock. That you can see only goats, some of goats that are here, no more cattle because of the drought. We do have gardens there in the field. That one is then also the same problem with the elephants. So we know in water as well. And we decided, let's start the backyard gardens that we can help survive from it. That's why we started now this new idea, and that is now you can see it help us a lot. But the problem, we need some equipments, materials that we can use to have a proper garden that can give a living to the community, to the family as well.
And you mentioned elephants. I guess that's also an important point. And for you as a farmer, what are the key issues, or what are the species that you find conflicts with the most with farming, whether that be previously with cattle or currently with goats or with your garden here?
The most important one is that problematic one is lion to livestock. That's number one. And we talk also about hyena to livestock. We talk about cheetahs and jackals in terms of the small livestock. Yes, and we talk about the elephant to the gardens.
I want to ask, and I hope this is okay to ask, and I think it's an obvious answer, but have you experienced direct conflict with lions? Have you had livestock taken by lions? And or any other predator, hyenas, jackal, if that's happened, how did you feel when that happened?
Yes, I did have a counter on that. My livestock was eaten by lions, and hyenas, and you can mention a lot of them. If you have a son or a girl is eaten by something, will you be happy about that? Livestock to us is like a son or a girl to me. If it's now taken by a lion, where will we eat my children? Where will they eat? Where will they survive? Or how will they go to school if I lost all my livestock? It was like a shock to me.
Yeah.
Because we talk about the coexistence, but I didn't feel very happy about what it happened.
What resources, infrastructure do you need to make living, coexisting work now?
We need to have a proper fence to the gardens, lights that can chase away the elephants from gardens. And the other thing is that in terms of the livestock that we're talking, we can have the early warnings systems to the wildlife, like predators like lions, hyenas, and cheetahs, for them to be monitored every day when their movement. To have also these line-proof crawls for the livestock, for us to coexist. We can survive with the livestock and gardens, and the wildlife also can survive. Together we can do that.
I guess, that's the questions that we wanted to ask, but was there anything that you want to talk about, those subjects that you haven't said yet?
We need more funds, more income to the conservancy, for the conservancy to give better benefit to the communities.
It's a
recurring theme.
Recurring theme,
Yeah.
if you could say that's a recurring theme, and also something that we've really sensed is a great importance from this conservancy and the people in it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
A huge thank you to Joseph again for sharing that. And there is one thing that really stuck with me, and I think it's the first time on any of my trips in Namibia I've actually spoken to someone directly about having a loss of something from wildlife, from human-wildlife conflict, so actually losing livestock. And I thought it was, it's very telling to hear someone like Joseph say how emotional that is for him, and what that actually means from I was going to say, in reality, it means you've just not only lost an animal, but you've lost money, which is going to impact your family. And I guess it also just kind of hammers in a bit more fear as well. It must do, to know that it can happen.
You imagine communities, rural communities in countries like Namibia living alongside wildlife, but actually it's so much more extreme than how it would have been. A lot of these communities are now like this intense, concentrated area of vegetables and water and animals, and then the rest of the landscape is devoid of herbivores, and there's no water, so they're going to be drawn in even more.
Exactly. And I just, I don't know, hearing, I mean, I did think to myself when I asked Joseph that question, like saying, how did you feel? In my head, I was like, I don't know why I've asked that, because of course you feel like shit. Like, why would you not feel like shit? But I also wanted to hear it. I wanted to hear how he felt with that. But that is just something that stuck with me when we listened to it back.
I think sometimes with interviews where you kind of like, you have to go through that process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But no,
but we connected, I think.
I think also as well, like, the ideas of how to kind of mitigate
the solutions are
so simple. We want to know where the predators are so we can avoid it. It's, having that assistance and using technology that does exist because it is in place. Having collared lions.
So what you do is you collar one lion from the... Lions famously hang around in prides together. Where one lion goes, the rest do. Yeah. So you collar one lion, and then you have an early warning tracking system where the lions come near to where the community is. Then you bring your livestock in and lock the gate.
Yes. And the other thing to remember is this isn't always a pride of lions doing this. This is quite often a young male or an old male that is on their own.
Oh, no,
and obviously hunting is harder when you're on your own. The pride have more luck, but a solo male, for example, is going to, so it's easier for the male to go to livestock.
And there was not one whisper amongst anyone we met on this whole trip that they should be killed or culled in any way.
No one.
It was like the wildlife was meaningful and important.
Yeah.
But recognition that actually the answer is an early warning system.
Yeah.
And
you could tell that a lethal control might be a last resort.
And
we're not saying that they wouldn't ever want to get to that. If they kept having loss, then they're going to want to sort out the lion.
Yeah.
However, everyone that we spoke to, every farmer was talking about ways, early warning systems, so the community and farmers can react. And
same for elephant. Well, I mean, the elephant one is like, about better. I mean, I knew elephants were big, but I never really thought about, I mean, I've seen elephants before. I've seen elephants in Sri Lanka, and now I've seen elephants in Namibia. But I guess I've never seen them do damage.
You haven't seen we saw the damage of the water tanks.
So they have these water tanks, and they just crush these things, and the water comes out. Can. And so if you've got a luscious little vegetable garden growing, they're just like, I think this is my elephant voice.
Thanks, guys, for gathering me water.
It's like basically great. There's just vegetables. I'm going to eat some of them. There's water. And they cause so much destruction just because of their heft.
And it's not surprising that people in Namibia might not always, or these communities might not always describe an elephant as majestic, because it's not overly majestic when it's just taken away your entire water supply.
And we had another interview actually which dug a little bit deeper into growing and farming, and actually,
yes, absolutely,
and how those systems have changed. Actually, we just talked about how the livestock are now kept closer to the community, therefore bringing predators in, as opposed to being out
in the field, in
the field with herders. But we had another interview within the same community.
This is in Ehi Rovipuka Conservancy in the northwest.
And our next interview is with, this is going to be hard for me to say, but I'm going to give it a go.
Go for it. You got this.
Uaperendua Muzuma.
That was perfect.
Okay.
Says the English man.
It's a difficult one.
Any Namibian listening now is pissing themselves laughing.
Yeah, I know. I'm so sorry. We listened to him saying it so many times and practicing it because I didn't want to get it wrong. But hopefully I did that okay. But this man reminded me of my dad, and I found it really difficult.
And Nadia did get very emotional.
I did get very emotional. And he looked like my dad as well. So it was quite an emotional interview, but a very, very lovely man talking about food security farming.
Another farm we're at.
Another farm.
We've been to quite a few now.
Yeah.
This is nice. And they're all being completely different.
Yeah, my name is Uaperendua Muzuma. It's my name. I'm the headman of the area. And I've live here, born here, live here for almost maybe 50 years. I'm also a farmer.
50 years in this area. So I have to ask, what did this area look like 30 years ago?
Talking about maybe in those 30 years, there was a good rain in this area. Compared to today, there's no rain. Rain is now scarce, so you won't get rain like we used to have in that times. I think, and if I remember it, in 1981, that was the last year maybe we get a bit, and from there, the rain started go down until today.
If you've watched that change since 1981, you've seen the rains get less. Did you notice that straight away, or is that something you noticed as you look back, or is that something you saw happening? And if it was something you saw happening, what were you feeling across those last 30 years?
You cannot see what the rainfall will be this year, or how will be the rainfall will be. It happened just like that, and they didn't was aware of it. But when it happened, it killed the living of the people. Everything have come down, so it is something that hurt the people a lot. Maybe you are the one who might know how is the rainfall coming this year. Those who are going up there to the sky and see how will be the rain this year. But for us, we don't know anything. It just come like that, unexpected, and it hurt people a lot.
Something that came up a couple of days ago on one of the farms, it was Vicky. She was talking about how it doesn't just mean that you lose the animals, and it doesn't just mean that getting water is harder. Actually, the community coming together to celebrate with food being an important part of how the community comes together. She misses that. And is that the same case here? That because there's not that abundance where they would make big meals and people would come around. Is that the same that's happening here as well?
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. We look at how they're living in the village, from household to household. When you have a bit hand that you can help another one, so he check, this guy is not in need of this, then he gives something for what he need. So it's how we do here in our village.
And as I just looked to my left there and saw your garden over there with your vegetables growing.
Maize.
Maize. And it is that something you've done for a while? Is this a very new thing? And how have you found gardening and growing that type of food in the time you've been doing so?
In the past, we used to live out of those big gardens in the field, which are watering by rain. Climate change, it brings us now to start with the backyard gardens. This can help us not to go at shop and buy onion, cabbage and so forth. Just pour it here and you use it at home instead of going and buy. Yeah. So it helps, but if you can see that it's too small, you need at least to enlarge it to more have vegetables there that you can help at the home.
What kind of things are stopping the garden getting bigger? Is it the land?
The most important thing is the income, the money. You don't have enough fund for you to enlarge it, because we have been living out all the way from the livestock, and livestock have been gone. So you have to sell the livestock to have money, and you have nowadays you don't have livestock for you to sell. It's just a small of it to survive or out of it, not to sell them. So you cannot enlarge the garden because you don't have money to enlarge it.
I think as well, it's to give you that opportunity. Is there anything that you would like to add in the discussion of farming in this area that you haven't said, or that you would like to pass on to the listeners back in the UK? Is there anything you would like to say to those people?
Human-wildlife conflict is the most important challenge that we are facing here as the farmers. Lions, hyenas, cheetahs, and leopard, and more you can mention, is the most important challenges that we are facing here as the farmers. We are the one who agreed to have conservancies in our area, so we need to protect our livestock on the wildlife, because we are surviving also from wildlife. There are income that coming through the conservancy from wildlife. So we got something from there. And while we got that little amount from the wildlife, at least also our livestock must be protected. If we can get help for us to afford to pay the cattle header or a goat header, this can happen so for us to coexist with the wildlife. It helped a lot with the early warning system. As we are talking now, we got a collared lions. They call it 39. He's moving around here. And when they realize that the lions is moving towards the cattle or towards the homestead, the game guard are giving the information to the farmers. Farmers, these lions is moving that towards your homestead, and they tell the cattle headers, no, take this side now, because the lions is moving this side. So it helps us a lot. So that's why we need more and more, as in terms of early warning system, the cattle headers, and the game guard as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Des. It's interesting, isn't it, how the gardens used to be in the field. It's almost like wild gardens, and you just let the weather systems look after it, and you'd go and gather when you needed to. It's almost a half and half of gardens and gathering.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess I think we, as Western people, we're learning and understanding a lot more about Indigenous communities' approach to farming. It's been proven that the Amazon rainforest that we assume is a wilderness has largely been shaped by Indigenous communities and cultures, harvesting and planting and moving seeds around in certain kinds of ways. So you look at the Amazon, you're like, well, that's just nature being as wild and wacky. As possible. And it's just that actually that I think our very, very intensive hard cultivation that we're used to in our heads, just not farming and planting as has been. Another thing that I thought about to mention, we talked about these really easy solutions that communities are calling for, which is the early warning systems and technology, but also like game cards, right? Let's talk about the fact that conservancy that we were at had, I think, 3
or 4.
Tickets for people to come and hunt game, which brings in, I can't remember the amount of money now, but it's not a lot of game.
No.
And the community eats the meat for an awful lot of money. And one thing that, you've got people like the farmers we've just interviewed saying because they get that money, they get part of that money so that they can buy the seeds, have the resources to plant and grow the food.
And ultimately make the gardens bigger. So to sum up, as we always do, I think it's safe to say, and no one would mind me say this, especially when Nadia and I were in Namibia, is that Namibia as a whole was going through a food security emergency. You'd agree with that?
Yeah, it's a crisis.
Yeah, a crisis. And we know that from the government. There was talks at the time of the government taking actions from considering wild coals, including animals in national parks where there was abundance of populations that they could use to feed or give meat parcels to areas of rural communities that are really struggling with food security. So we know it was a crisis. We know that, way back in history, communities would have relied a lot on wild meat. And now with things like the droughts from the climate crisis, game has kind of gone elsewhere where there's more secure resources for them, so the populations are less. So that would be relied on a little bit less now, and communities would have relied a bit more on animal agriculture. However, the drought has now taken such a harsh impact on that people are now stepping away forcefully away from animal agriculture and relying a bit more on gardens to provide more nutrition. Hearing from Joseph and Uaperendua, we know that there's still more to do. And we know the solutions are simple, right? They need funds. They need funds to be able to grow that. I think we've said to each other, it's not as easy of just going to get a job to get some money.
No, it's
to
like
get
it's kind
the
of
funds.
like, yeah, this is kind of like amalgamation of like a cash-based system.
Yeah.
And then also a subsistence-based one.
Yes, exactly.
Life, where, you know, there isn't like a building trade. Or,
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there probably is largely, but on a
There's jobs within the conservancy, sure.
Yeah, jobs in the conservancies, but, you know, there's this kind of real mix. Like, you know, you might not necessarily, as an individual, earn cash personally, but it has to trickle through the conservancy to come to you to then buy the resources that you need.
Yeah.
Because you can't have a fully subsistence life anymore.
No, absolutely. You could, not in those environments. So we can see that the solutions are there. The solutions are there, and farmers are adapting, but you do still get that sense of there's just a few more things we need. Do you know what I mean? To really kind of push forward these solutions.
To flourish.
To flourish,
you know,
I know. I'm saying,
flourish.
just to be able to flourish just a bit more, to be able to get this secure, whether that be talking about the amount of food we have or protecting the food we have from wildlife to be able to coexist as these people and these communities have done for millennia.
So there you have it.
Yeah, that's food security or food
episode
and farming.
Food
episode
and
3 in
farming.
Namibia. Lots to think about, lots to consider, I guess, or hold as we talk about the climate crisis in somewhere like Namibia. But I feel like, talking with the farmers out, I don't know how you felt, Nadia, but there was a lot of proactive thinking with it.
Yeah, I did
Loads.
really get that feeling from talking to this conservancy and community of just like, it's all right because this is how
we're going to do this. Yeah, we're going to deal with it.
We just need some more money.
Yeah. But you also, I think the other thing, the reason why I felt like that is because we saw the gardens. It was a very visual. We saw the change.
Growing.
Yeah, we saw it. It wasn't just ideas. It was ideas in action. We were walking around seeing these gardens and being shaded by the sun.
And also a willingness for a very, very rural Namibian community to be like, yeah, fuck it, let's have some technology. We'll track. We'll do early warning tracking systems. You know, like, maybe it's just my Western brain, but there's like, and the ignorance, that's naivety, that maybe technology might be hard to adopt, and it's just like, no. We'll have early warning systems.
Also, sorry, one more thing, and I'm gonna talk about Maxi here. Maxi doesn't like eating veg.
Maxi doesn't like eating veg.
We're talking about people actually changing a diet here.
Yeah, culturally.
Let's just remember that. This isn't just adopting this is about changing a diet. Maxi, love you to bits. Of course you eat veg. I know you do, but
you eat veg to get the veg out of the way before you eat the meat.
Yeah.
Let's be honest.
We've seen you move it around the plate, Maxi. But then also do you know what I mean? This isn't just about, this is, what I'm trying to say is this isn't what Namibians or Herero people would want to normally be doing. This is doing because they have to.
Yeah.
They're being forced to change diets in order to feed themselves.
Yeah.
So I think that's something we just need to hold there as well. This is kind of a impact from the climate crisis going, great, well, I actually really enjoyed my diet before, but now I'm having to eat more maize and vegetables.
And I guess, like, you know, imagine now you not being able to get all of the things you want all of the time.
Hobnobs.
Ginger nuts.
Ginger nuts.
And to be like, Ryan, here you go, you can have these 5 things now.
Exactly,
you know,
exactly.
It's quite a big cultural shift for you, psychologically.
Absolutely. So thank you, nerds, for tuning in to episode 3 of Journey Back to Namibia. Food and Farming will be back next month with episode 4. In between each week, we have our nature news series where Nadia and I unpack news from around the world to do with nature and conservation.
Ever since the beginning of January, we do your weekly nature news, so you don't have to scour the newspapers and the internet for what's happening with wildlife and conservation around the world. We give
just
it
do it for
you.
Yeah.
But it is now my therapy, and it's a short, snappy episode, so join us for that.
If you're not following us on social media, make sure you do so. We're on Instagram and Blue Sky. We are present on Twitter, but we're not really tweeting. We are just releasing episodes on there. We are on Ko-fi. If any of you would like to say thanks to Into the Wild and give anything you have in your wallets or your purses and you'd like to throw a few coins, you can go to www.kofi.com/intotherwildpod. Do that. All the links that you need for that are in the write-up to this episode. But until next time, nerds, look after yourselves.
Bye.